Thank you very much. Now this morning, I think it was during the WFW presentation, we heard that without some form of carbon capture or carbon market, decarbonization is pretty much impossible. To speak now a little bit about some aspects of that, we're very happy to have Hauke Kite-Powell, who's Senior Vice President and Managing Decarbonization with Marsoft. And Hauke will give us a presentation entitled Markets for Carbon and the Shipping Market. Hauke, please.
Thank you, Kevin, and Mia and Marine Money for inviting me to speak to you this afternoon, or this morning, if like me, you're on Boston time. As Kevin said, I'm going to talk about the voluntary carbon markets and the role that they can play in decarbonizing the shipping industry. But to set the stage for that, I want to take a slightly bigger picture view first, and I'm going to echo some themes that we've heard already in the earlier presentations here. I think one key thing to keep in mind as we look at the next couple of decades in the shipping industry is that we're moving from what was a century, the past 100 years or so, of more or less continuous growth in demand for shipping transport, particularly in the energy commodities, but in many others too, to something that's going to look very different. So the 20th century, the last 100 years, were all about growth, and that was driven by several key factors. One was global population growth, of course. Another one was increasing productivity and the acceleration of global wealth that brought along with population growth. All of that would have been impossible without the availability of plentiful and affordable energy, primarily from fossil fuels. And so that whole acceleration of global wealth that we've seen in the past 100 years was fueled literally by hydrocarbons, by fossil fuels. And in that world, it was safe to order a ship with a life of 20 or 25 years because even if you had a brief period of downward trends, the long-term trajectory was always for growth, for increased demand. The coming century is going to look very different from that, and people have pointed this out already. For one thing, global population is not going to continue to increase indefinitely. Our children and grandchildren will live to see the day when global population begins to decline, as it already has in many parts of the world. At the same time, the amount of energy that we use globally to produce wealth is on a downward trajectory. It has been for a long time, not just in terms of carbon, but in terms of total energy needed to produce economic value. Just saw a news story today about China announcing new aggressive targets for reducing the carbon intensity of its economy. And so even if it weren't for climate concerns, we'd be seeing a very different future in energy demand and in hydrocarbon energy demand in particular. With climate concerns added in on top of all of this, the likelihood is that we will see peak hydrocarbon energy use in the next decade or so. Some energy commodities will be much more quickly affected by this. Others may take longer. But as you can see from these projections, the likelihood is that we're looking at a flattening of growth for demand for these commodities and for their transport, and others have already pointed this out as well. And quite possibly some steep declines in the not-too-distant future. As you may know, Marsoft is in the business, among other things, of providing market forecasts for different segments of the shipping industry. And so just a quick example from the LNG shipping space, we look at global gas demand and gas demand by country and by region. One thing you can see if you look at projections for future demand for natural gas globally is that while we've had strong growth in global natural gas consumption in recent years, the forecasts for future demand have been revised downward regularly, not just by the IEA, which is shown here, but also by industry groups. And when you look at LNG in particular in that context, the plot here shows the dots on this graph show published projections of global LNG demand rising from our current level of about 400 million tons per year, in the high cases to a near doubling of that. But there's a wide range of uncertainty around what that future demand for LNG really is going to be. And even if you look at the high cases here, you can see that it's likely to peak in the mid-2030s and then perhaps flatten or begin to decline. That means that an LNG tanker ordered in the next year or so and delivered toward the end of this decade will just be 5 years old at the time when the global demand for that transport capacity may be peaking. So these are important things to think about in the context of shipping investments now. And I think it highlights the uncertainty, one set of uncertainties. The other one, of course, is propulsion and fuel questions, and we've heard a lot about that already. I won't belabor the IMO targets and measures. The regulated carbon markets are one driver of the decarbonization need. And for ships that are exposed to the EU ETS, they will face what is several $100s per ton tax, effectively, on the fossil fuels they use. That is a strong incentive to reduce fuel use and carbon emissions. But the long-term solutions are unclear. Many people today have already said this before I did, so I won't talk more about that. In this kind of situation, there is a premium on being able to delay decisions about what kind of new buildings to pursue, and there's value to extending the useful trading life of older ships, in particular by reducing their energy intensity, their carbon emissions. And so this is an area where Marsoft has recently expanded its focus. It is possible with targeted retrofits to reduce fuel consumption in older ships significantly and to bring them not all the way up to modern eco standards, but to get closer to that. The challenge is that many owners are reluctant to make significant investments in energy efficiency retrofits, maybe because under the terms in which they deploy their ships and charter out their ships, they don't really see themselves the benefits of reduced fuel consumption. Maybe it's because of a limited holding period they expect for the ships. They don't think they're going to return on those investments before they sell the ships. What we've done is put in place a process by which owners can get credit for reduced carbon emissions and see some financial benefit from those reduced emissions through the voluntary carbon markets. This is a joint project between Marsoft and Kite-Powell, which is a US-based carbon trading company. And the key feature of this is that there's no cost upfront to the owner to go through this process, and effectively no risk. The owner sees a return, a cash flow on their carbon reductions without having to spend any money up front. And the reason for this is that we want to incentivize owners to take more aggressive steps to invest in retrofits. So the economics of this depend on the ships and on their operating profile, on the retrofits that are applied. Rather than spend time on a specific example, I want to offer anyone here who's interested in talking more about this, the opportunity to speak with myself or my colleague Belinda, who are here today. Suffice it to say that a fleet of 10 ships enrolled in this program with aggressive retrofits applied can realize something like $500,000 in revenue from voluntary carbon credit monetization over a 5-year docking cycle. That's not going to pay for the retrofits, but it can help make the case for more aggressive retrofitting, and that's exactly what this program is intended to do. I won't belabor the details of the process. It's complicated and involved because we work with the gold standard carbon registry to ensure that these credits are credible and well documented and therefore valuable in the market. But all of that detail is something the owner doesn't have to deal with because Marsoft and Climco take care of the entire process from beginning to end, again, to make it easy for owners to take advantage of this and to invest more in the retrofit process. The list of eligible retrofits is long and getting longer. There are also some things over time that will fall off this list as they become standard practice. All of these details we're very happy to talk more with you if you're interested about, and here's some contact information. If we have time, Kevin, I'm happy to take a couple of questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions, please, for Hauke? Let me ask you a question then. You're presumably here having meetings with various clients, and you meet with various clients discussing this product. What's the profile of the client? I mean, what type of client are you meeting? What are they looking to get out of it?
Yeah, it's been a real mix of small owners, larger owners. I think we have some owners who are enrolling a dozen or more ships with this process. Others are starting with 2 or 3. In some instances, these are owners who have a very forward-looking, aggressive retrofitting strategy in mind because they really want to be leaders in this space. In other instances, there are smaller owners who don't yet have a clear plan, but whom we can help make the right decisions for retrofits that make sense for them financially. In addition to the cash that comes from being able to sell the carbon credits, there's also this verification of carbon savings that the owner gets out of the process and recognition from an international registry that emissions have in fact been reduced. And for many owners, that also is a valuable piece of information to use with their stakeholders.
Okay, and let me just add on to that. I mean, we hear a lot from owners who are doing retrofitting. They realize they need to do it, and they're doing it. What you're suggesting is like an enhancement to what they're doing in any case. Is that correct?
That's right. The idea is to incentivize and encourage additional investment. And so this whole process is predicated on using revenue from the voluntary carbon credits to enable additional investments in further decarbonization. So it's an attempt to accelerate the trajectory for the older ships.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, please? Nope. Then I think we're done. Thank you, Hauke.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.